Welcome to Watching Complain. This is The Power of the Dog. It's a Netflix exclusive, and it stars Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm so glad I said the right actor.
It stars more people than Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
Who cares about the rest?
Oh, okay. I'll name
What's their names? I don't know.
Cody Smit-McPhee, Jesse Plemons, and Kirsten, or is it Kristen Dunst?
I think it's Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah, I always get because of that and Kristen Stewart, but Kirsten Dunst
who
starring in it as well.
Was unaware of. I didn't realize that Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst are married in real life. I never realized
what?
That.
Yeah. They fell in love on the set of Fargo.
And they're a fantastic husband and wife couple in Fargo, and they were very good in this too.
And they elevate each other here just because of the comfort. And it's good because I haven't seen Kirsten in a lot of things recently. The last time I remember actually seeing her, and I know she's been like active in tons of things like Becoming a God in Central Florida. I saw the pilot of that, which unfortunately got canceled, they say, due to COVID, but other things because they got an automatic renewal, and then the studio rescinded that, which was a shame. But
we should just do that movie on Zoom.
Yeah. But outside of Sofia Coppola movies, like, did you guys ever see her remake of the, what's it called? Not The Bewitched, the Beguiled. That was one of those where I thought it was going to be like a man-hating movie. And I was like going in ready, like, okay. And then it kind of wasn't. It was kind of like the tragedy of Colin Farrell's character, but Kirsten Dunst, who's in it, is kind of in between that, and I thought that she was kind of good in it. So it's like it's nice seeing her on the screen. But what'd you guys think of the movie?
All right, Rob. Phil, it's over to you first.
Oh,
I go last.
Okay. How to put this? I thought it was a good movie, but it was really slow, and yeah, I think it was one of those ones where you could tell someone you're not missing anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's all you got.
I mean, we're on a podcast. Give us
I think their acting was great. I just felt like it was just. I don't know how to put it. It's like they did a really good job at acting. They did a really good job at showing, like, I'm trying to remember the word, cinematography,
yeah.
But it was just, to me, it was just filled with a lot of boringness, a lot of like all the in-betweens. Yes, thank you. Emptiness is perfect.
I actually kind of, I'm in the same boat. I'll say I think that it's one of the best movies of the year. Actually, I kind of went in with the right expectations, though. Like, I figured it was going to be slow paced, and it was. And I kind of knew, because I'd seen the director had done a TV series called Top of the Lake, which is about a murder. Yes. And I figured, I'm like, okay, this is going to be one of those art house films where the threat of something beneath the surface is happening for the entire movie, and then at the end something happens. So it's like knowing of like, okay, brace yourselves. I went in with it, and to what Phil said, Johnny Greenwood's score, which my dad, at one point we were watching it, and even without noticing or commenting on the score, he said, this sounds like there will be blood. Like, it deliberately evokes that. My dad doesn't remember stuff from like 14 years ago or whatever, like I do. And he's like, I get that vibe strongly. And then of course you check, and same composer of that. And it was very, to that effect, I think, is kind of what they were going for. I even thought that was the same with Benedict Cumberbatch's performance, which I will say I don't think is great. Like, he's good, he's solid, he doesn't rise above the material in any way. I think it's a role that I get the sense that any guy could have played. It probably would have even been more beneficial if an American played it, because he's speaks in his Doctor Strange American accent, which is still so weird.
I'd say it wasn't the Doctor Strange. There's a bit more twang to it,
yeah,
which was kind of distracting.
Yeah. And it felt like he was doing a put on. And it was funny because I just got my mom to watch The Imitation Game, which he's very good in, playing a male at the opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah. Where he's a lot less put upon macho. I just don't find him intimidating as a presence at all. He doesn't have that weight of either expectation or ego or whatever makes Daniel Day-Lewis tick. I don't find that. And I don't think it's unfair to compare that performance because they're both macho, toxic characters.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, I think toxic is clear. And I wouldn't say macho. I'd say that there's a simmering anger and hatred to both characters, but Daniel Day-Lewis, it fucking explodes off the screen when he does it. But I feel the same way with this. It was there, but it never quite came to the top the way it should.
I'll you know what the best example, and I said this to my dad when we were watching it actually, and it's funny because not a lot goes on in this movie. Like, it's very under the surface, but there's just a conversation when Benedict Cumberbatch and Jesse Plemons are talking. I don't remember what specifically it is. And I just said to my dad, I just get the feeling like Jesse Plemons is a better actor than Benedict Cumberbatch and is just blowing him out of the water in this movie. Like, everything that Jesse Plemons says sounds real. And you're not thinking about it being Jesse Plemons. Whereas I understand that the facade is part of this Benedict Cumberbatch's character, but it's a lot of time it feels like a cheat in a way that it's it's okay. Yeah, it's okay that he's unconvincing because his character is unconvincing. But like, I think in terms of the principles, when, as Phil said, like, the craft is there, the cinematography is there, the director has an expert sense of like tension, and the mood is like completely in its grip. For a movie that nothing happens, I wasn't quite bored with it. Like, I was sitting back and stuff, but it was like everything else is so masterful that I thought Benedict was, if I had to say, the weakest part of the movie. He was fine, but he's fine in a movie where everything is on this level. And I would say to other people, if it's not for you, I understand. I think it was a good movie, but I wouldn't force anybody to watch it.
I would actually say that Kirsten was not up to par.
Yeah, I'd say for me, she was the weakest part of the movie.
I would say like she's like the second weakest, just because it's like, there's a lot of people that don't like Benedict Cumberbatch for reasonable reasons. So it was like, because I was more sympathetic to her being annoyed by him, as I was being annoyed with him, I connected with the character. Yeah, I don't think that she's particularly great in the movie, especially compared to Jesse Plemons and everything else that is going on. I would agree with you. And I don't think either of them really deserve awards for it, except maybe Jesse Plemons. So I would agree with you. But I would say Benedict Cumberbatch being cast in the movie has a bigger responsibility to the storytelling than Kirsten Dunst does. So I like, she doesn't have to do as much heavy lifting as Benedict should. So,
but when it comes to the storytelling, they I don't think they did enough to put those two characters against each other. Like, it just showed minor annoyances, and I'm just like,
the piano.
No, I disagree. I thought they did a fantastic setup of those two, and they did it in. And I'll just start with what I think. I really enjoyed this movie a lot.
Nice.
And I think I'm more a fan of these types of movies than you guys are. And you brought up Top of the Lake.
I'm surprised.
So was I. I did not think that I was going to enjoy this as much as I did. You brought up Top of the Lake, and Jane Campion did Top of the Lake, and she did piano. And the piano was my first kind of introduction to Jane Campion. And this was more similar to Top of the Lake in that the three main things she gets across in the story is uneasiness. The entire movie, there's a real feeling of unease. You're never comfortable watching the movie. Loneliness and kind of hiding. You know what I mean? Like lying to yourself about who you are. So I really like that. And I thought the three principals did that really, I should say four principals. Cody Smit-McPhee did a great job of
Nightcrawler.
that.
I remember him going back to the road.
Yeah, that's what I remember from. I honestly didn't really give a shit for him as Nightcrawler, but
Yeah, he
I
has nothing
reminded
to
him
do.
from The Road. Yeah, The Road, he was great. And I think, yeah, a beautiful looking movie. New Zealand is a fucking beautiful place, so I love whenever they have huge fucking shots of New Zealand. It's just such a beautiful place to look at, and it makes you want to go. Every time I fucking see it in a movie, it makes me want to go to it. And one thing, it's funny, it didn't occur to me until about halfway through the movie, is it's a Western movie, but it lacks what makes Westerns good. So one thing I realized that I wrote down is, does anybody have a favorite Western movie?
I've thought about this, and
Back to the
it's
Future.
part three.
Yeah.
I've thought about this for me, and the interesting thing is that and I was thinking about, and I think Cody Smit-McPhee is in it as well. Old West. Have you seen that movie?
The name is familiar, but I
It's
can't.
with him and Michael Fassbender, I believe, and he takes Michael Fassbender to meet a girl, and the finale takes place out in the middle, like the middle of the plains. I just remember the visual of the house out in the middle of nowhere,
No, you know what?
and
I'm thinking of 12 with Michael Fassbender. I'm thinking of 12 Years a Slave.
yeah. For me, I would say if I had a favorite Western, I would have to say, and this is controversial, and it's because for me there has to be one made during my generation of filmmaking in order for me to grab onto it. So it's like one of my favorite gangster movies are like The Departed and American Gangster. And I know American Gangster does a lot of the stuff that we've seen in gangster movies, but it's like it hasn't been done while I've been going to the movies. So it's like I connect with those more readily. So for me, I'd have to say The Hateful Eight, because
Yeah,
even though
wonderful.
yeah, because going back to our complaints, actually, I don't think we've reviewed a James Mangold movie. We brought him up before, but it's like 3:10 to Yuma gets close, and then it just, as usual, like screws up in its ending. It gets lazy. And that bothered me because it's like it overestimates the male camaraderie aspect of it. After spending like 2/3 of the movie where he basically has to drag him along, that it's yeah. So it would have been 3:10, but it's Hateful Eight.
My dad, huge fan of Westerns, so I watched a bunch of Westerns with my dad. And so I've got my, favorites that are just kind of, they were my dad's favorites, so they became my favorites type of thing. But the first Western I ever saw that I was like, holy fuck, this is amazing, is Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, which is probably the best Western I've ever seen in my life. And the reason I bring it up is this movie, it's a Western, but it's not. It takes place in the Old West, but it's not a Western. And if you want to watch a Western, you got to watch stuff like Hateful Eight's a great example, but Unforgiven, True Grit, Magnificent Seven. Yeah, you want to watch movies like that. The one thing I was missing from this movie was kind of exactly that, True Grit. Like there's never a filthiness to this movie. They constantly, which was funny because they constantly show Phil, Benedict Cumberbatch's character, as always dirty. He doesn't like to clean stuff, but he looks like a guy that they just before they started shooting, they like rubbed dirt on him. He doesn't look built-in dirty.
And yeah, the Vaseline type.
Yeah, it looked, yeah, exactly. It just looks like it's copy pasted into this.
Yep. But do you think that's
when you look at Jeff Bridges in True Grit, he looks like a filthy drunk, and it's so fucking good.
Or Tom Chaney, Josh Brolin in that movie. Yeah, right? True Grit. I'd forgotten about that. I'd put True Grit actually above Hateful Eight, because Hateful Eight is more of a mystery movie to me, even though it's like has all the trappings of that.
Even the original True Grit it's a John Wayne movie, but the original True Grit's pretty good, man.
Shouldn't have given him an Oscar for it. I doubt he earned it.
The other thing I want to bring about this is
I had a question. I had a follow-up, sorry, based on your filth comment, because going back to the thing about there's that scene where Benedict Cumberbatch is washing himself in the river with mud, and the fact that he's kind of weirdly presentable, but there's close up on hands because the movie has this kind of beauty to it or whatever, and it's so specific that I don't know. I wondered if that was on purpose, but
it felt like dirt, and to me that was again the covering up who you are. You know what I mean? Like lying to yourself about who you are. That's where I thought that came from, because there was and I don't know if this is just specific to Jane Campion, but you see it, and I've only seen two of her movies that I might have seen others, but I don't recall them. But Top of the Lake and The Piano, I recall very well. And that was a similar, especially in Top of the Lake, like when you get to the end and was David Thewlis's character is a different man than we expect him to be throughout the entire story.
And
but
did you feel that Benedict Cumberbatch's character, like, I know that he changed to be more sympathetic to Smit-McPhee's character?
See, I don't think, and that's one thing I was going to bring up. I don't think he did. I saw the ending of this movie. Yeah, I think I saw the ending of this movie a bit different than maybe you guys did. So I'm anxious to get to that. The other thing I wanted to bring up that I really like, I'm just reading through my notes here. Jesse Plemons is a fantastic punching bag. In all of his movies, he's so fucking good at playing the down. He's not even down in his dumps, but he's the guy that everybody punches him. Everybody fucking makes fun of him and punches him in the fucking face, and he sits there and takes it. He's so good at this role that for me, I was like, this guy is the fucking standout of this movie. He's so good at being so quiet and trying to slide under the radar, and that's what just makes him fucking the best.
And I felt like there wasn't enough
of him,
of his character.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, when's he gonna appear again, or when's he gonna have his thing? But because the movie, like we said, goes on for so long, where you're waiting for something, you're constantly left to think about, like, the actions that Phil Burbank has on his brother, or what, I'll just use the actors' names, what Benedict Cumberbatch does, how it affects Jesse Plemons, how it affects Kirsten Dunst, how it affects the kid, to the point where it's like you go through all of that to where it gets to Cody Smit-McPhee, and it tracks all the way back to Benedict Cumberbatch's actions, and that's how it unites the characters. I was thinking for a long time of, like, what's Jesse Plemons gonna do? Like, is he gonna, because anytime you see him on screen, to Rob's point of, like, he's such a good actor and he's so good at being a punching bag, it's like his character from Game Night I was thinking of like, oh, is he gonna have another turn and be a part of it, because you believe he's capable of anything.
And that's another thing that I felt is this whole movie, it's very similar to, like, Taxi Driver, The Shining, Hateful Eight's another good example, speaking of Westerns. It feels like it's reaching a boiling point. It feels like it's constantly simmering and getting hotter and hotter to a point where something's about to explode. And that's part of the uneasiness of the movie that I was 100% on board for. There was really no part of this movie that I didn't enjoy. There were parts where I was like to your points, like, this could be sped up or this could be edited out. We don't need this. For me specifically, where one part that really stood out that you could pull this out and no one's going to care is where Benedict Cumberbatch discovers Kirsten Dunst's character drinking behind the house. And he's like, and he's whistling at her. I'm like, we don't need this. We've already shown.
That's one of the things, though, that I think about, like, when and it's funny because movie came out December 1st. That was like essentially 2 weeks ago by this recording. And when there are scenes that you imagine in your head when you're, like, watching a movie, every time, like, you say her performance or something, like, I have the image in my head of her drinking behind the house, and I'm kind of like wondering, what's the meaning of that? Him just tormenting her, or what does the bottle mean in a movie like this where everything has symbolism to it? But I was thinking about that, and it's kind of funny how, because The Power of the Dog, I forgot, was on the schedule. I didn't make any notes for it, but as we're talking about it, I remember it, like, so clearly, not like super clearly, but it's like, it's a movie that I've thought about, and it's definitely one of the best of the year. Obviously we'll get a best picture nomination.
The stuff that sticks with you in this movie sticks with you. It's not forgettable like Shang-Chi. It's not forgettable like Hawkeye. It sticks in your fucking brain. At least for me, it sticks in my fucking brain, and that's what made me really enjoy it.
I just wish that it had more. Like, I didn't. I felt like it was just, like, pandering to, like. Okay, I feel like it had, like, these certain points that it had, and then between those points, it was just like, what do we do? We'll just use cinematography. We'll make it look nice, and it's like, okay.
It gave me
gone into it more.
It gave me time to think about those characters. So there was some dead spots, not a lot, but the majority of the spots where nothing was happening made me think about, like, you know, to Will's point of, what is Jesse Plemons planning against fucking Benedict Cumberbatch, or what is Benedict Cumberbatch planning against Kirsten Dunst? And it was all that unease. That's one thing, unease, and knowing a character might snap and go nuts. That's one of my fucking favorite things in movies like Taxi. The two that it reminded me the most of was Taxi Driver and The Shining. You know, you think of Taxi Driver, and, you know, the whole "you talking to me" scene, or just scenes when he's driving around in the taxi, and you think of The Shining, when the fucking camera just sits there watching Jack Torrance hugging his son Danny, and the fucking camera's just moving in on him. It's those scenes where you're like, oh my God, these guys are about to snap. That's what I really liked. And the last point I'll bring up about it. So the ending. Yeah. The ending to me, and here's how I saw the ending, is so Cody Smit-McPhee sees Benedict Cumberbatch get his hand cut. And he knew already, okay, I have anthrax tainted blood available, or anthrax tainted skin available. I think I know how I want to kill this guy. I got the vibe. That's why we showed the bunny being killed. That's why we see Cody Smit-McPhee see Benedict Cumberbatch as a guy he fucking hates. Right at the start of the movie, he makes a decision. If I can kill this guy, I'm going to kill him. And he makes a decision.
Why do you think he makes that decision?
Yep. I think that Cody Smit-McPhee is a stone cold killer in this movie.
Yeah, I think
from the beginning.
From the beginning.
From before the movie.
But he's got the mind of a murderer. And
the idea is that he killed his dad, right?
That
I didn't even think about that.
Or drove his dad to suicide. Yep. Yeah. And because his father was like, Jesus Christ, what's the matter with you? You're a monster of a human being. Yeah. The fact that he gets tears in his eyes, but he's never emotive. That's why every other character is emotive except him. And by the end of the movie, when there's a scene where they show Benedict Cumberbatch washing his hands and working on the rope, and then it cuts to Cody Smit-McPhee just looking at him. And I was like, that's where I was like, oh shit, he 100% knows what he's doing.
Well, he was waiting for his time, because he said to his mom, I'll take care of it.
Yep. Exactly.
Oh yeah.
And when you start, and that's what I was like, you start fucking thinking back, like, holy fucking shit, this kid planned this out from as soon as Benedict Cumberbatch insulted him for the flowers. He was like, I'm killing this fucking guy.
I don't know if it's that early.
I was thinking,
for me, but it might not be that he was like, okay, I'm absolutely killing him. But if I get the chance, if I ever get the chance, this guy's going.
I was thinking he made the decision at the point when he's playing with the dog, power of the dog, and he whistles it away, and it's that he's like, fuck this guy, because that's the power of the dog.
Yep, this guy's going fuck it. And then, of course, you know, the barking dog that he sees right on the mountains.
Is that just for symbolism? Like, I need somebody to explain this to me like I'm 5, because I really want to discuss this. And people were like, oh, did people not get it? It's like, yeah, I get it.
I didn't see the dog.
Hey, that's you didn't see the dog?
didn't see it. I'm like, what are you guys looking at? Stop it.
Same as Phil, same as Will. Took me a second. I was like, oh yeah, there it is.
It was mole rats all over again.
And it was like, I knew enough about the film language where I'm like, okay, I know what they're looking at here is gonna be the dog. Like, and so I'm already like looking for it. And then when they say that, I'm like, am I gonna have to pause this thing? And I didn't. And because earlier what Phil and you said, Rob, about like not much happening, I felt that because there was so much going on beneath the scenes and stuff, that it gave you enough time to think about, okay, what could happen, who's capable of what's going on. That my dad, right before they revealed about the anthrax, because I actually didn't even, like, I knew I had medical stuff and I knew the cow was sick, but I had forgotten about it, when my dad's like the movie allows you to catch up and think, okay, I'm pretty sure he didn't die a natural death or something, even though that also would have suited the movie. My dad said anthrax, and then I remembered in my hand when Benedict has his hands in the rawhide, and then they do a close-up on Cody Smit-McPhee with the sleeves where he says that. I'm like, oh, that's he could have done it there or something like that. Like you knew the moment, and because the movie was so good at not holding your hand and letting you know those things, that to me, it's like, I would say that's like probably the best direction I've seen this year.
Yeah,
And
it's definitely one of those things where you kind of want to watch the movie again now that you know.
You come away from it thinking
I
about
won't.
it, you know, and that's always the best. That's always the best part of a fucking movie is when you're thinking about it after you see it. You know, that to me is the staying power of a really good movie. Is you're thinking about it after you see it. As soon as I saw Shang-Chi, I'm like, well, saw that, great, never gonna watch it again. But this is a movie that I could consider going back to just to see if there's any parts that I missed. But I will say one thing, and it's funny. This was one of my other complaints about the movie. One of the very, very few complaints. There's so much simmering under, and you've got to think about what that character means by this. And oh yeah, the way that they fight between the piano and the banjo, the power of the dog, seeing the dog on the side of the mountain, I think was one of the most kind of on the nose, really the only on the nose part of the movie. Hey, if you're a guy that is struggling with his sexuality, you're gay, no one else around you is gay, you've got to keep it a secret, makes you kind of an asshole, you'll be able to see the dog. Bronco Henry could see it. Fucking Phil Musgrave could see it. That's what I felt like. And I was like, that's so obvious. You know what I mean?
Is that what because I was busy trying to figure out what the heck he was saying, that it's like,
well, remember he's hanging out with everybody and there's like, what are you staring at, Phil? And he's looking at it. He's like, if you know to look for it, you can see it. He says, if you know what's there, you can see it. Mm-hmm. And then Bronco, he talks to Pete, who's Cody Smit-McPhee's character, and says, Bronco, Henry told him about it. And he's like, oh yeah, the dog. He's like, you see that right now? He goes, yeah. And that's when I think Phil makes a decision like, oh, I think this boy might be a little bit like me, might like guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That and it felt, I was kind of bummed out because I was like, my God, that's pretty fucking on the nose. You know what I mean? When the rest of this movie makes me think so much, that was like, oh, that's kind of obvious.
For somebody of my intelligence, every little help that the movie gave me, I needed, because I wasn't gonna figure it out. Like, I don't feel it really counts, and I'm guilty of this as much as anyone, of where you look stuff up after the movie and then you see all the thematic stuff and you're like, oh, this, and then you're explaining it to somebody when they're asking about it, but you didn't know. Yeah,
I've done that with movies where I was completely fucking lost. You know what I mean? Like some movies I watch, I'm like, I don't have a clue what's going on, and then I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I watched. There were two movies that I did this for. One, because I'm doing my video editing, I watched Anna Karenina, and it skipped, which was a problem. It skipped through, and the way that they decided to adapt the movie was as a page turner, where they only do the highlights, and it's only a 2-hour movie of like a 600-page novel, so they speed through everything.
That's difficult.
So it skipped, and I had no idea what was going on, but it was fun to watch because it was so visually interesting. And then the second one that I needed it more so, even though it's like a longer movie, is I actually think I have it here. On
VHS.
No, on Blu-ray, because I rented it for my thing. Oh wow, is it so hard? So
first thing,
renting
all your date.
So,
I used to rent things.
So a lot of great elements in this movie. Like, it's a visually interesting movie. Of course, it's a Keira Knightley period piece from a famous work. But the one that I needed it for most,
Bring Up Souls as a Strife. No,
was To Live and Die in L.A.
That is a William Friedkin movie?
Correct. Yes. And it's funny because I'm like,
something.
They're good cops. They're not dirty cops. And I'm trying to think, okay, why are they so panicked that somebody found them or what's going on? And I actually paused it, read the Wikipedia plot description because I was kind of zoned out. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. But for the movie I was watching, and we'll get to this for Hawkeye, but I was thinking, okay, what's the motivation for everybody at this point? It doesn't seem strong enough. So yeah.
So what would you rate this?
Easy A-. It's a movie that you can very easily. 10. Okay.
How many dogs out of 10?
How many dogs out of 10? I love it.
I'll give it a strata of in between 9 and 9.5. It's not exactly my kind of movie, and I don't want to overpraise it or pretend to like it more than I do. It's a very well-made movie that I don't think I will watch again. It's completely deserving. But like because of Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, and because of Kirsten Dunst, it was originally going to be Paul Dano in
I've heard that.
and Elizabeth Moss, which would have been great. Like Elizabeth Moss is like a really great actress. I even had enough to write an article on all of the roles that she chooses are actually like very good. Like she was able to see the potential of the Invisible Man and makes that movie a lot very good on Mad Men, and then does Top of the Lake and The One I Love. If you've ever seen that movie too, that's another good one that she's in. Rob, you'd hate it. It stars Mark Duplass. And it's about this couple who goes away on a cottage and they discover something. It's a bit sci-fi-ish. What's
it called again?
The One I Love.
No, okay, I'm thinking of a different movie.
Okay, Rob, what would you rate it?
Similar to Will, a 9. It's up there with not my favorite of the year. Dune, I think, still takes my favorite of the year. But
I hate you so much.
It was much better, and I was much more into it than I thought I was going to be. So yeah, for me, it's a 9.
You guys totally have the critic scores that I was totally expecting.
Because I'm not usually the critic guy. You know, like I like movies. Like I'm very critical myself, but what I mean is because I know that makes me sound like I'm full of shit. But I
like an art snob.
I would I'll go see. I remember I went to go see Death Wish, even though it got bad reviews. I enjoyed Rambo Last Blood, even though the critics didn't like it. There's a lot of movies that I don't like if it's like a fun thing, and I thought that because it starred Benedict Cumberbatch that this movie was going to be boring, so the fact that it wasn't boring was kind of all I needed to get on board with it.
Ghostbusters,
which I still haven't seen.
This movie is right up my alley. Fast and the Furious and that ilk is not.
Well, I would tell you that.
What about you?
I'm totally the audience score on this. Mm-hmm. And so the tomato meter for critics is 96%. Mm-hmm. The audience score is 61%. Now, coming into this review, I was sitting at 6 out of 10. And now, like having talked to you and reviewing it, I'm at 6.5. Not much higher, but
here's the thing that annoys me is that 60 actually sounds pretty fair for this movie for an audience score. But like, I hated The Green Knight. Okay, like I get it, like what it was doing, but I was worried that this would be that, and to me, that's like pretentious territory.
I enjoy, but Green Knight was a bit too.
I would say generalizing it could be relatable, like
The Green Knight.
Yeah, it relies a lot on cinematography.
But Green Knight is all artsy fartsy. This was like
this was kind of artsy fartsy.
I don't think that Green Knight has. People are going to get mad at me for this. All the people that watch this,
the one person.
But
what's her name again?
Over substance.
Oh shit! Yeah, what do we call her? Diana.
Diane. And that's it.
Yeah.
Right, we'll see what Diane thinks of Power of the Dog.
Thank you for tuning into the Power of the Dog review. Where do we go for more episodes? More webs,
interwebs.
Well,
that's next week.
Internet.
When Jesse Plemons gets nominated, if he does, and I hope he does, think of us as we were the ones who called it and said, you know what, he should get nominated.
Yeah,
that's us.
He deserves it. Yeah. Thank you. Bye. WatchAndComplain.com, FilmGamer.com, and
Three Amazing Guys in Rob.
Rob'sAmazingJourney.com.
ThreeAmazingGuysDoingRob.com.
There you go.